as you can all see, I'm in my car, although I am parked, making my way back to San Jose, but wanted to make sure that I tuned in to welcome everyone with the Democratic Party. A very happy Diwali. Diwali is something that's always been very special to me and my family. We'll be coming together tomorrow at my house with my brother, sister-in-law, and nephew with my father, and do our annual traditional prayers, and then eat together and just kind of celebrate this new year together. And for me, especially as a Hindu American, and in celebrating Diwali, my experience has been one of, and my life experience has been one of really trying to live my ideals. And I think many of you who know me, I hope, can see that on occasion, where, I kind of set aside a lot of different kinds of career paths, what have you, that may have been personally enriching, but instead found opportunities and ways to serve the community. And when I think about, growing up, I think about Diwali, and I think about, of course, light defeating darkness, and the stories that we would talk about with my family and my father, about vanquishing evil. I think about that to this day, in terms of my work, in terms of my policies, in terms of what we need to do and should be doing as Democrats. And so I think, Diwali is a great opportunity for us to think about what else we can be doing to rid the evil forces, to rid the corrupting forces that may infiltrate our thought process, infiltrate our service, our work, and figure out how we can really focus on our fellow woman and man, focus on our neighbors, focus on those who need us to uplift them as we've also been uplifted. And so I just want to wish everyone a very happy Diwali. I'm sorry I'm not in a more stable environment where I'd be able to be on much longer, but I do want to thank the Democratic Party, API Caucus, for hosting this event, because I think, over the years being API, I think it's been quite a journey to incorporate all aspects of being API, including the South Asian experience. I think we're seeing more of that in recent years. I think that's fantastic. And I think this is one more step in that direction of ensuring that we're all included, and we're all, our cultures and our faiths are celebrated as well. And the last thing I'll mention is this year, for the 5th year, I authored and introduced a resolution recognizing Diwali by the state of California. So I'll be posting about it tomorrow, because tomorrow's Diwali. But I'm very grateful that my colleagues have always supported our efforts to recognize Diwali by the state of California, and for us to appreciate that we have the ability to have that kind of recognition by our great state. So thank you all so much, and happy Diwali, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deepa Sharma, and I'm proud to serve as chair of the API caucus of our state party. Before I begin, I actually want to acknowledge the untimely passing of Supervisor Wilma Chan. She was the first Asian American leader to serve as majority leader, and she was also the first Asian American on the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. And Wilma Chan is a fighter for justice and healthcare for all, and it's a very grave loss for all in Alameda County and the communities that she represents. So tonight we are here to celebrate and acknowledge Diwali, and I want to thank the California Democratic Party for holding space and recognizing this really important cultural holiday. South Asians are an integral part of the API coalition, and just to give you an idea of how culturally significant Diwali is, the way my mom would explain it to me was that the time of Diwali is celebrated how the Christmas season is celebrated here. And she always said that to me to make sure that I knew that it was something special, because you couldn't always tell when you walked out of your house here and the day would just be normal. But our culture, in our culture, it would be a very special occasion. Diwali is a time when everyone is cheerful and festive, and even if it might not be in your faith tradition to celebrate it, you find some way of doing that. According to a Pew Research study in the United States, 7 in 10 Indian Americans say they celebrate Diwali, and this includes most Indian American Hindus, 95%, and includes even nearly half of those who are not Hindus at 45%. That's a really important stat to show what kind of cultural significance Diwali has to South Asian communities. For me, Diwali marked a particular day of the year where both my mom and dad took the evening off from work, from tending to their restaurant, and we could share a joyful meal together. Something that was difficult to do on most days of the year because of the family business. And I think that speaks to the experience of immigrant families like mine. Diwali is the festival of lights, as Assemblymember Kalra mentioned, the triumph of knowledge over ignorance and light overcoming the darkness. Celebrations of Diwali actually vary from region to region, family to family, and indeed, some form or variation of the Festival of Lights is celebrated by 4 different faith communities that hail from South Asia, including Hindus who celebrate the triumphant return home of Lord Ram after defeating the forces of evil, Jains who commemorate Diwali as the enlightenment of Lord Mahavir, the 24th and final Jain spiritual teacher who preached Jainism in ancient India. A segment of the Buddhist community also commemorates Diwali as the time when Emperor Ashoka converted to Buddhism. And in Sikhism, adherents celebrate Bandi Chhod Divas, which celebrates the release of the 6th Guruji from jail, which we will discuss more about. We'll be hearing from voices within our California Democratic Party family today, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by them. But first, I did want to ask Assemblymember Kalra a question because I know he has to leave. Assemblymember, if you're still on, I wanted to ask you a question if you're still here. Awesome. Okay, so Assemblymember Kalra is, maybe he's,
Again, I am here.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, oh, maybe you're not driving.
Yeah, no, I just parked right now. Okay, good.
Okay. So, as I remember, Kalra, you mentioned the themes of Diwali, good versus evil, and lightness overcoming darkness.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many ways we can imprint that metaphor onto the work that we do. Is there something that you are working on right now that gives rise to that?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking the question. I have a bill, AB 1400, CalCare, which would bring single-payer healthcare to California. And I know as Democrats, you know, we believe that healthcare is a human right. And we think about the themes of Diwali. We think about, you know, the thinking about what brings darkness into our world. I often think about those that don't have healthcare, those that are suffering, those that are struggling, those that are dying, those that are going bankrupt. And the reality is that bringing healthcare is bringing light to so many people that right now don't have it. And so that's why it's so meaningful to me. That's why I definitely had that connection when I think about single payer healthcare. I think about CalCare. It's very much connected to my values, very much connected to what I think about when I think about how you express your values through action, not just through words, not just through prayer, but actually in lifting up other people. Because I believe no matter what faith you are, at the end of the day, if you're not demonstrating that faith in actually improving the lives of people in your community, in your state, in your country, if you're not actually demonstrating and exercising that faith and uplifting humanity, then I think that you're falling short of living up to the promise of your faith. I certainly feel that as a Hindu. I think that if I'm not doing what I can to lift other people up, to bring them healthcare of all things. I mean, that's talk about lifting people up. I mean, I think that is something that is very personal to me. And when I think about now with Diwali, Diwali season, it is absolutely bringing light, bringing health, bringing a sense of humanity to our community. So absolutely. So thank you for that question. And that's absolutely something that I'm going to be focusing on a lot in the year ahead.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Kalra.
Thank you.
Well said, Assemblymember. Next, I'm going to introduce my dear friend, Harini Krishnan, who will lead us in an invocation. And she actually had the honor of reciting this invocation at the virtual DNC convention last year. Harini is a powerhouse organizer, a CDP e-board member from AD22, and she serves as the National Organizing Chair for South Asians for America, a national grassroots organization formed to build South Asian political engagement nationwide. Harini, please take it away.
First of all, Deepa, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for your incredible leadership in spearheading and organizing California Democratic Party's first Diwali celebration. And I also want to give a big shout out to the California Democratic Party state leadership and staff for their efforts in organizing these events, for centering our beautiful cultural and racial diversity, and for organizing events like this that showcase our rich cultural communities. So much gratitude to them. Today I'm very proud to be here as a California Democratic Party delegate and a Finance Committee co-chair, but also as, like you said, as the organizing chair for South Asians for America, as an Indian classical vocalist, and a proud Indian American Hindu who was raised in a household where all these cultural holidays were celebrated with so much joy and pomp, and raised by parents who truly emphasized the importance of respect for all faiths, the importance of leading with compassion, and for the importance of our shared humanity, and the importance of unity in faith. So it is an absolute honor to be here on the occasion of Diwali, or Deepavali, as it is said. My parents are originally from southern India, and Diwali is celebrated all across the world in many, many ways. It is, like you said, it is celebrated by Jains, by Buddhists. It is celebrated by the Sikh community as a Bandi Chor Divas. And it is a celebration where it ushers a new beginning. And we are truly, it is a celebration of light, and it is a celebration of love. And it is a celebration of the good in all of us. And it augurs prosperity. And so with that, I would like to share a verse from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And it is a Sanskrit verse that begins, Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Shantir bhavatu sarvesham purnam bhavatu sarvesham mangalam bhavatu mangalam bhavatu mangalam bhavatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm actually at a Diwali celebration in DC, right outside the White House, and it is an honor to be here.
Harini, that was beautiful. Would you mind sharing what that prayer that you just gave, what it means, what the shlokans mean?
Absolutely. It is a verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is one of the, one of the tenets of our Sanatana Dharma faith. And it basically translates to, may there be well-being for all. May there be peace in all. May there be fulfillment in all. And may all of us experience that which is auspicious. And I really thought that this verse is so apt, because when I think of Deepavali, when I think of Diwali, I think of compassion, I think of love, I think of light, I think of unity. I think of that which brings us together in the spirit of shared humanity. And I think of putting aside our differences and coming together in joy and in harmony and in the spirit of light. So that's why I chose this.
Thank you so much. Next, I want to introduce Ajay Mohan. He is the Executive Director of the Orange County Democratic Party and is the youngest person to serve in this capacity. As the Executive Director of the Orange County Party, he works every day to make Orange County bluer. Thank you for being here with us today, Executive Director Ajay.
Thanks.
My first question to you is, as the ED of the Orange County Party, what do you do to ensure that diverse communities vote for Democrats in Orange County?
Absolutely. And first, I'd like to thank you, Deepa, for the invite here. And Harini, thank you so much for your leadership with the Indian American community in California. You'll have to excuse me. My roommates have puppies. You might be able to hear them while I'm talking. So just FYI. But I think the most important thing that I can impart here is that we have to focus on being intentional with reaching out to diverse communities. And what intentional means is outreach from start to finish, making sure that we are really looking at every step we're doing in outreaching to communities and making sure that every step has cultural competency goals integrated with what we do. So we must actively listen to our communities before acting. Whether it be canvassing, I'm very proud in my hometown of Irvine, we elected the first Muslim mayor of a major American city, Farah Khan, or we issue targeted candidate recruitment programs through working with our Asian American Bar Association and texting, outreach to community groups. Even right now, my team's meeting with members of the Vietnamese community to discuss registering more Democrats there and running local Vietnamese candidates. So that's, I think, part of it. Some programs could include communication in different languages, and it's not just communication in the languages. It's really sourcing community members to give input on phrasing, intent, those cultural competency standards I was talking about. So we have a responsibility, I think, as Democrats to meet voters and meet our constituents where they're at. It's also about diversity in campaign or government workers and staff. So I was recently part of a program called the Blue Leadership Collaborative, which specifically tries to do that in Democratic circles, tries to make sure that we elect or that we have more people of color and more women working on our staff. So I'm proud to say that we have a training program here at our party that integrates cultural competency from everything from fundraising to field outreach. And I think these are the kinds of efforts as Democrats we need to be thoughtful about supporting and moving forward. So I'm proud that our party in general takes an intentional look at diversity. And My experience as a second-generation immigrant and as an Indian is just one of many crucial voices to shape how our party spends its limited resources to make sure that we're reaching our diverse communities.
Thank you so much, Ajay. Seeing the results from the recall shows that all the work that the Orange County Democratic Party is doing under your leadership, under Chair Briceño, what you're doing is clearly working, and we're so grateful for all that you're doing to outreach the API community as well. And now I'd like to introduce Avinder Chawla. Avinder is a committed public servant, Democratic Party activist, delegate, and resolutions committee member. Avinder ji is a community leader who has significant experience conducting interfaith work as a Sikh American representative on the Newport Mesa Interfaith Council, and has done significant voter engagement work in South Asian communities for our party. Avinder, are you on camera?
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Avinder ji, as a member of the Sikh community, the community, as I understand it, celebrates not Diwali, but a holiday called Bandi Chhor Divas. Could you tell us a little bit about what that holiday means for the Sikh community?
Thank you, Deepa, first of all, for the invite to such a wonderful event, and want to thank the party leadership also for promoting the cultural diversity by celebrating Bandi Chhor Divas and Diwali. I would start with one line in our Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Manas ki jaat sabhe eko pachanbo. It means all races of man recognize only the one, where one means God. Wishing everyone a very happy Bandi Chhor Divas. And the theme behind Bandi Chhor Divas is in the 15th century, we had Guru Arjan Dev Ji, our fifth Guru, who was killed at the hands of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, which prompted his son Guru Har Gobind Ji, the sixth Guru, to emphasize the military dimension of the Sikh community. He built a fort to defend Ramdaspur and created a formal court, Akal Takht. These aggressive moves by Guru Har Gobind Ji prompted Emperor Jahangir to jail Guru Har Gobind Ji at Gwalior Fort. After he was imprisoned in the Gwalior Fort, Jahangir's health went down, and he met one Sai Mia Mir Ji, who advised Jahangir to release Guru Har Gobind Ji from the prison, which he was kept for no fault of his own. Guru Har Gobind Ji said that he will not leave the prison because there were like 52 other kings that were also in the jail, and those kings were all saying that the atrocities done by the Emperor Jahangir. So with this in mind, Jahangir ordered this, that to allow anyone to cling with the Guru tails to leave the fort. So with this in mind, Guruji ordered a big gown with 52 threads, and with that 52 threads, all the 52 kings held the threads, and they were able to leave the fort along with Guru Har Gobind Ji in October of 1619. And after that, Guru Har Gobind Ji was known as the Bandi Chhor, means liberator of the prison. And he came to Amritsar at our Golden Temple, and the Golden Temple was illuminated with hundreds of lamps to celebrate his return. People burst crackers, distributed sweets for the same. And that day coincided with Diwali. And this was how Sikhs celebrate Bandi Chhor Divas.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Next, I'm proud to introduce Representative Ro Khanna, a representative for California District since 2016. As Silicon Valley's representative in Congress, Representative Khanna is a progressive capitalist who has led the way on tech policy and job creation, working across the aisle to pass multiple bills into law. And Ro has remained committed to progressive principles and policies that will ensure a more competitive and prosperous economy. Thank you so much for being here, Representative Khanna, to celebrate the value with us today. So Representative Khanna, I wanted to ask you, so you serve in the leadership of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, where Indian Americans like us are quite well represented in the progressive movement. Would you mind telling us what drew you to progressive politics and fighting for policies that advance the interests of the common person?
Deepa, first, let me thank you for the invite, for organizing this, for your leadership as chair of the Asian American Caucus for the party. And I appreciate, of course, your life story. We've been friends many years, and as a daughter of someone who had a restaurant in San Francisco, I used to go to that restaurant all the time and understood how hard it is to be growing up working class, middle class, which is the experience of so many South Asians. And so what drew me to progressive politics, I would say, are two things. One, my own life story. My grandfather, as some of you know, spent years in India's independence movement alongside Gandhi and Nehru in jail for 4 years. And that gave me a sense of appreciation for human rights, for the justice and struggles of people, both inside our borders and outside our borders. And I always have had a passion for a just foreign policy, for a world where the aspirations of every human being are treated with dignity. And then I think within the United States, seeing the example of my parents and seeing what I had as someone who grew up middle class. I had a great education in public school. My dad was an engineer, but always had healthcare. I always had the opportunity to be in a safe neighborhood. And I thought, you know, these are such basics, but why can't our country provide this for every American? That's not asking too much. And so I think that's really what the progressive agenda is about. It's about making sure everyone has the shot I had, a decent health education, decent healthcare, to be able to have your chance to make a mark. And those are the reasons I was drawn to progressive politics.
Thank you so much, Representative Khanna, for bringing our California values into the Capitol. It means everything to us to see your representation. So next I want to turn it over to the panel to ask a few questions. If you wouldn't mind coming on camera, everybody. So first, I want to ask, and I direct this question to Harini. How does your faith impact your approach to politics and public service generally?
Deepa, first of all, thank you so much. And I want to apologize for the noise. I've kind of found a quiet corner. But I want to begin by saying, you know, one of the fundamental core principles of our faith, of Sanatana Dharma, is seva. But seva is not something that is exclusive to Sanatana Dharma. Seva is at the core of Jainism. Seva is at the core of Sikhism. Seva is at the core of Buddhism. Seva basically means service, service to our concept of shared humanity and community. You know, it can be service to your community, service to your country, service to, you know, the neighborhood that you're in. And so for me, I view, you know, I view my engagement, my efforts to mobilize the South Asian community politically as a way to perform seva to that shared humanity. And through that, I'm living my faith. But it is something that is at the core of all faiths. And that's something that I want to reiterate. And I think what brings us together is so much stronger than what divides us. So seva is at the core of all faiths.
Harini, thank you so much for mentioning Seva, which is not just exclusive to Hinduism. It is also a tenet of Sikhism. Avinderji, would you mind sharing with us how faith impacts your approach to politics?
Our first Sikh Guru who founded Sikhism, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he believed in, his teachings were like Kirt Karo means work honestly, Vand Chako, share and consume, and third was Sefa, selfless service. So by first he meant that any Sikh could earn his living through honest means. And the second one, he said, Vand Chako. He believed in the people who were capable of taking the responsibility for the needy, they should be helping the needy people. And the third one was selfless service, which he believed that he said one could achieve a true contentment through engaging in complete selfless service. So with that seva in mind, if you go to any Gurdwara, you will see a langar is served and everybody takes langar sitting down, which means equality. Everybody is equal. Once there was a langar served also in the White House where all the senators and congressmen came and sat down, unifying the fact that everybody is equal.
Thank you. Next question is actually for Congressman Khanna. I wanted to ask you the same thing that I had the opportunity to ask Assembly Member Kalra. We talk about the Diwali metaphor about lightness overcoming darkness. And I wanted to ask you, is there a time in your career or political issue where you've had to overcome adversity? And I say this knowing that you're in the throes of trying to deliver a huge bill for the American people right now. So I just wanted to ask you about a time where you've had to overcome some adversity.
Well, it's a wonderful question. And I was with a couple folks in Impact at an event, a Diwali event in Washington. And some of the young folks were asking me about public service. And, my first run for political office was a protest campaign against the Iraq War and the Patriot Act in 2003. And at the time, I took on an incumbent in my own party, and people would walk in the other door when I would walk into meetings, and they thought, who is this young person who has the audacity to challenge a longtime member of Congress? And there was a lot of criticism and a lot of personal criticism. But one of the things that you realize, I think, in politics is that rare that the criticism lasts, and they rarely get the last word, and usually people forget about it, if not the next day, certainly a few days later. And that experience made me just realize that if you persevere and stick to your own path, I mean, always be open to feedback, but not take things personally, that you can overcome a lot. And so it's allowed me to read all my Twitter feeds and smile when I get criticized and move on and not doubt my own convictions.
Thank you, Congressman. I know all young people, especially, have drawn inspiration from your run from back in the day. So thank you for mentioning that. I also want to ask Ajay the same question. Diwali is about overcoming lightness over darkness. Is there something that you've worked on, especially as your time as the executive director of the Orange County Party, where you've had to overcome something difficult?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Congressman Khanna for his comments on young people and making sure that we're challenging the status quo. I find myself in that position pretty often, just as a professional advocate. But I'd say constantly we're facing diversity. And I think this is something that a lot of immigrant folks or people of color can relate to, is our Americanness being questioned. And this doesn't necessarily happen a lot in Democratic circles specifically, but in talking with constituents and in the everyday part of this job, I see it, and I have my Americanness questioned pretty often. I mean, I think last week, the vice mayor of my hometown got called out in a public comment for not being American, and she's a Korean American, very proud, it really hurts to see that immigrants are not seen quite as American yet. And I chose political work because of what my immigrant family went through, because my family believes in the American dream and its ideals and making sure that we can forge a life for ourselves. So I think struggling through that, we have to recognize that immigrants are part of our American story permanently. And that's something I really want to see us fight through.
Avinderji, do you have a story about overcoming adversity that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I do actually. Thank you, Congressman Rokana, for his comments, and my good friend Ajay from Democratic Party. As the Diwali message is Bandi Chhod Divas is good over evil and light over darkness. Especially after 9/11, it has been a very difficult time for our community, and the people very emotional. And we had the first hate crime in the form of Balbir Singh Sodhi, who was attacked because of his articles of faith, making him the first victim in the Sikh community post 9/11 crime. And Sodhi ji, he was a turban Sikh, was shot by Frank Rock. And when the judge asked him in the court that why did he do that, and his answer was he claimed that the shooting was in return for the terrorist attack on 9/11. And on also August 5th, 2012, 6 worshippers were killed in an attack at the Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, which was the deadliest attack on any American house of worship since the 93 attack on the 16th Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. So our community was very emotional, especially after 9/11, and still 20 years have passed, and we all are coming through and learning day by day.
The Sikh community siblings are particularly vulnerable to hate crimes, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Avinderji. I want to ask Harini about the concept of lightness overcoming darkness. In your organizing, you've had to overcome a lot, including, I think, getting a vice president elected and overcoming so much of those barriers. Could you talk a little bit about something that a story you'd like to share about overcoming something hard?
First of all, I want to say the classic example is last night. I was at Governor Terry McAuliffe's election watch party last night. When we came in, the energy was so amazing. We really thought, because, I've only spent 3 days canvassing in Virginia. There were folks on the ground who had spent the last 300 days knocking on doors, making calls, texting voters. And this was a year-long commitment for them. And then the mood changed, and it changed, and it became one of dejection. And the only thought that came, and looking at them, I was sad, I was disappointed. I felt crushed, but at the same time, I remembered that, democracy is a movement. It's not a moment. There will be times where you face adversity, but that adversity gives you strength. It makes you push harder. It makes you find the resilience and the grit within you, and it makes you fight harder. So to me, it's actually, it was wonderful that, Diwali is a time when I remember that I am stronger than I think. And I have to remember that strength, that light comes from within, and nothing can dim that light from within. And so I always remember that. It's Maya Angelou. It's one of my favorite quotes, and I always remember that.
Oh, Harini, I can say probably for everybody, you exude so much light, and we appreciate everything that you bring to our organizing. You're a joy to be around. I also, so I want to ask, so Congressman Khanna, he's had a pretty interesting upbringing in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I wanted to ask him, if he had any stories of celebrating Diwali in rural America, I guess. Well, I guess Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So pretty conservative area.
Well, I appreciate the deep. I wouldn't describe it as rural, probably more suburban. There's some rural elements, but more suburban America. We had a group of, my parents had a group of friends, Indian American friends, like so many immigrant families, who would gather on Diwali and for the holidays because they didn't have any parents here, and they didn't have sisters and brothers here. And so the friends became their extended family. And I remember gathering and celebrating Diwali, both doing fireworks outside and with lighting sparklers and eating sweets, mithai, and listening to stories of some of the religious texts, the Ramayana, or in particular. And so I always felt that it was something that could celebrate and was proud celebrating, even though there was a very small Indian American population there. And I always thought that people were curious about my faith. And so, my experience was one where I grew up in a community that was 95% white, mostly Christian, but where there was space for me practicing my faith. And I think it's ultimately what gives me a hope, a confidence in the ultimate openness of this country.
So can I ask, how did you come to Democratic Party politics, being from an area where it was kind of suburban, Republican, white?
Well, I went to school at Chicago, and there was a well-known person running for the state Senate who wanted to be mayor of Chicago, and it turned out to be Barack Obama. And I coincidentally knocked on doors for him, and that was my introduction sort of to electoral politics. And Chicago got more involved in politics, and when law school got somewhat involved. But it was really the war in Iraq that was my galvanizing moment, and the Patriot Act that made me think, okay, this is something I want to immerse myself in. I possibly could have become a professor or worked at the UN or done something else, but it was that moment that really focused me on politics.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that's really resonant. I know, at least for myself, the Iraq War was also a catalyzing event for my involvement in politics as well. So my next question for the group, so Ajay, I'll direct this to you. Are there any organizations aside from DPOC that you'd like to uplift, or organizations that do outreach to communities of color?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked this. This is an incredibly important issue. And I think there's a lot of great organizations that do this very well. Here in Orange County, we're lucky to have a diverse breadth of different subsets of the Asian communities. And one of the best organizations that I think does that kind of outreach work, that they helped field calls from, like, I think it was 8 different languages during the pandemic to connect folks with resources. That organization is called OCAPICA. It's Orange County Asian Pacific Islander Alliance. They're doing quite amazing work, not necessarily on the political side, but more on getting services to Asian communities. If you're looking to support, I think, something on the more political side, one of my main issues is diversifying campaign staff and making sure that governmental workers also look like and have similar experiences as their constituents. So in that sense, I'd encourage folks to look at an organization that I was involved with as a fellow, called the Blue Leadership Collaborative. And then that one, specifically, as I mentioned before, trains young people of color, trains women to get higher positions in both campaign management, but hopefully also elected positions. So, yeah.
Is Blue Leadership Club, is that only local to Orange County, or is that how, can anybody look into joining that org, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a young person and you're trying to be like a professional campaign manager or really a professional in politics, they accept anyone from across the country. My experience is that it is a highly competitive program, but what they do now, what they did in my cohort was they train folks to be campaign managers for competitive congressional campaigns. And I have to say, on the congressional side, we're still very much lacking that diversity. I think one of the only Latina campaign managers that's running a congressional campaign right now is here in Orange County, Alyssa Napuri, running Harley Ruta's race. So anyone can apply to that. So go look up Blue Leadership Collaborative on Google. I'll put the link in chat. But yeah, very, very cool organization. Now they're placing folks on Virginia House races and organizations like that. So I'm happy to say that some of those Virginia House races run by Blue Leadership Collaborative Fellows, run by diverse people of color, raised some of the most money in Virginia history for those delegate races. So very exciting results.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that tip with us. Avinderji, are there any organizations that you would like to uplift tonight? Sorry, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm part of Sikh Center of Orange County in Santa Ana, and you know, there during COVID, almost 1.1 million meals were served during COVID, and all my family, even 3 daughters, every week they participated in that. And one of the organizations in Riverside, they also were serving meals during COVID, and those were highlighted in the President Biden's newsletter for the month of July. And lately, seeing I'm also a part of White House Faith team that they meet weekly, and under Operation Allies that is helping Afghan refugees. We just started a Global Sikh Foundation, and we are helping local families in Orange County by collecting items, and we have contacts with the local charities who are helping Afghan refugees.
Thank you for mentioning that. The API caucus has actually is sponsoring a resolution that's before the CDP on Afghan refugees. So thank you so much for referencing that.
Thank you.
Harini, are there any organizations that you would like to?
First of all, I want to give a shout out to the organization that I'm proud to be part of, South Asians for America, with you. So we used to be South Asians for Biden. And under South Asians for Biden, we really did incredible outreach to the rich diversity within the South Asian diaspora. So we had Bangladeshi Americans for Biden, Pakistani Americans for Biden, Indian Americans for Biden, Sri Lankan Americans for Biden. So we really focused on that, but we also focused in terms of mobilizing the faith communities. So we had Jain Americans for Biden, we had Sikh Americans for Biden, Hindu Americans for Biden. And so it was a very targeted outreach to the distinct communities that come under that South Asian umbrella. And so since after the Georgia election, we regrouped, we became South Asians for America, and our intention is to build South Asian political engagement nationwide. And we now have chapters across 17 states right now. I'm actually on an organizing tour meeting with AAPI and South Asian groups around the country. So I want to lift up South Asians for America, but I also want to lift up the faith organizations that have now taken different forms. For example, Jain Americans for Biden became Jains for Justice. Sikh Americans for Biden, they're 2 very strong organizations that advocate on behalf of Sikhs, the Sikh Coalition and SALDIPS, Sikh American Legal and Education Defense Fund. Hindu Americans for Biden recently relaunched into Hindu Democratic Coalition. And a lot of them were Democratic organizers that actually organized, and were part of phone banks and canvassing. So, we are being, they are separate organizations, but within the South Asians for America, we are actively reaching out to the communities that form within the diaspora. And we want to ensure that our organization reflects that beautiful diversity. And nationally, we align ourselves with groups like, APIA Vote, NCAT, which is North Carolina Asian Americans Together, in Georgia, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian American Advocacy Fund. So we are doing the advocacy work to organize, whether it's for 22 or 24, and being very strategic in our organizing.
Yes, thank you so much, Harini. And you're leading the charge on that, and you're changing the face of API and South Asian organizing. So thank you so much. One final question for the panelists tonight. I just wanted to ask how each of you are planning to celebrate Diwali. So Congressman Khanna, what are you doing tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to be with my family, and we will be having a dinner together. We'll do some puja. Wish each other with, and there'll be just a time with the family. That for me is good. And then, of course, I'm also going to be home all week after reconciliation. So hopefully pass this week. And we'll be in the district and going to hopefully a lot of Diwali events.
Awesome. Ajay, anything happening in Orange County?
Yeah, actually, last week we had a Diwali celebration with one of our local organizations, the ECTA Center, that hosted alongside the city of Irvine, which is very cool. But for me, it's going to be as simple. I come from a pretty non-traditional background, but for me, it's going to be as simple as calling my mom and dad, my grandma over in Chicago, making sure that they're doing well, and that checking them on their own celebrations.
Awesome. Harini, how are you celebrating?
So first of all, I will say this. I'm an empty nester. I have a 21 and 23-year-old. So when they're home is when I celebrate Deepavali, right? But when they're home, what we do is I wake them up early. And this is not something they enjoy, but I wake them up early and we do something called nalangu, which is basically you take haldi and you take kungumam and you mix it into a paste and you decorate their feet and their hands, because, you are basically, you're cleansing them and you're auguring all good things. And then they go shower and they come back and then they light little lamps all around the house, but especially outside. And Deepavali, right, essentially translates to a row of lights in Sanskrit. So they light, a row of lights outside the house, and I make them do it because, daughters augur prosperity. Daughters are Lakshmi, and so for us, it's about centering our daughters, centering our children who bring us joy and light.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Avinder Ji, I know you don't celebrate Diwali, you celebrate Bandi Chhod Divas. How are you going to celebrate?
We do the same thing as Rokhana said, Harini ji said, and AJ said. I am really an empty nester. 3 times I said, because my wife is in India. I have 3 daughters. The elder one is in New York, flying back today, and my other 2 are in the first year of Chapman University. So tomorrow, like today, I'm here in the event with Harini ji and Congressman Rokhana opposite White House. I'm flying tomorrow early morning, and then in the evening, normally we go to the temple, light the candles. As we know, this is a festival of lights. Pray for everybody. And normally in Sikhism, for every prayer at the end, we say Sarbadda Pala. So means peace for everyone. So basically tomorrow with the family, have my 2 daughters, we'll go to Gurudwara and pray for the happiness. And may this Diwali and Bandi Chhod Divas bring happiness for everyone here and all over the world. This is our prayer.
Thank you. So I actually want to kick it over to Harshita Bondi. She is an intern for the California Democratic Party. And, something we want to make sure we highlight is that, yes, the California Democratic Party has an internship program. And in order to diversify staff, which Ajay talked about, it's important to have people like Harshita in this position. So Harshita, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. So I'm Harshita Bondi. I'm the intern for the California Democratic Department. I'm currently a public policy student at UC Davis. And I just wanted to talk to people a little bit about, our internship program and how that sort of relates to South Asians getting more involved in politics as we're all here for Diwali. So I grew up in Redmond, Washington, which is this, it's a very diverse town with this really big Indian South Asian diaspora community. There are a lot of tech workers, a lot of immigrants, and it's just a really culturally diverse place. It's not a place that gets a lot of political attention, but like that kind of changed when I was in high school, and there was this really big special election that was happening in my district. It was for a seat that up until then had been held by a Republican. And now if a Democrat won that seat, it would actually switch control of our state Senate to the Democrats, and there would be a Democratic trifecta, and it would open up the goalposts for the Democratic legislative agenda. And all of a sudden, tens of millions of dollars of out-of-state money were coming into our state, and all of this attention, this national attention, was on whether or not our Democratic candidate, who was an Indian woman named Manka Dhingra, would be able to win this election. And this is a district where maybe 20 to 30% of the people are Asian. And when Senator Dhingra visited my school a little after her campaign, she mentioned that it was about actually 90% of the electorate that's white, and it doesn't look anything like what our district actually looks like. And what I saw was that there was this huge outpouring of support in her campaign, especially from the youth volunteering for it, who were really the backbone of her campaign. And when she won that race and flipped control of the state house, it was a big deal, not just because there was this Democratic majority, but because she was actually the first Sikh to ever win a race in an American state legislature. And I really realized how important it is to see yourself represented in the government. And the truth is that no community, if they're not out there doing activism, voting, getting involved in politics, running for office, they're not going to see their unique goals, their values, their community's issues really represented in the government the way that they deserve to be in a democracy, which is why it's so important that more South Asians sort of get involved with politics, and especially more youth get involved with politics. And that's why it's really important that there are internship programs like the California Democratic Party's Future Leadership Internship Program, which allows, which really promotes more diversity and opportunities for the future political leaders of tomorrow. And yeah, thank you for listening. Happy Diwali, everyone.
Thank you so much, Harshita. So I want to thank all of our guests, Assemblymember Ash Kalra, Congressman Ropana, Harini Krishnan, Ajay Mohan, Avinder Chawla, and Harshita Bondi. And special thank you to the California Democratic Party for holding this event, for holding space for us to shine a light on a community that doesn't often appear in the spotlight in our party spaces, and to do that for so many diverse communities. You've been holding event after event, and I see you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, India, for facilitating this. And finally, if you would like to partake in Diwali, please, go ahead, light a candle, share a sweet treat with a friend, and a joyous meal with your family to let the light in. Democrats, let's plan to organize to win in 2022 so that knowledge can triumph over ignorance. Thank you all so much for joining us today.